poll that we have. So this is your YouTube. Is it all Scientology related?
Good morning. We will call the May 3rd, 2021 work session to order. We're going to start out with the CAFR, item 2.1.
Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for fiscal year 2020. Ms. Mitchell.
Good morning, Monica Mitchell, Assistant Finance Director. This agenda item is for the presentation of the city's annual audit for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020. But first, I would like to thank the members of the audit team. We have a small army of controllers, accountants, and other support staff that contribute to this process in the finance department as well as other departments throughout the city. But regardless of who they report to, whenever there's an audit request, they make it a priority, and that's what keeps this process moving toward a timely completion each year, especially when the audit sometimes encroaches on the rate study and audit preparation. I would also like to thank the department directors for sharing their staff with me. We have new auditors this year. Carr, Riggs, and Ingram was chosen pursuant to a new statute addressing auditor selection procedures, and Mayor Hibbard chaired that committee. The audit committee had the opportunity to preview this presentation last week and ask questions. Now I would like to turn the presentation over to David Alvarez, the audit partner, and John Brielmeyer, audit manager with Carr, Riggs, and Ingram. The presentation is not on the screen. You all have the little skinny book in front of you.
Great. Thank you, and good morning. Thank you to the council for allowing us to present today, Mayor and City Manager. I want to start off and thank Monica and Jay, the rest of the finance team. We're, as she said, we're new auditors. The audit is a challenging process. It really makes it go much smoother when you guys have such a competent staff, very open with information, very transparent. As we'll go through, there were a couple of issues identified during the audit. The staff was very open and, again, transparent about the things and things that were going on. So we have full confidence. So we have I have a short presentation to go through. So on page 2, go through the audit reports and letters. I think you also have the big book of financial statements in front of you. Included in those financial statements are a couple of these reports are included in that set of financial statements. The first one is the main audit report, and this independent auditor's report is our report on whether, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented. And we gave an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that auditors provide. When you then work to the back of the financial statements, there's some other reports that cover other topics. The first one is this government auditing standards report. This is a report in accordance with government auditing standards, and it's around internal controls over financial reporting. During our audit, we did identify one material weakness that on a subsequent page, I'll get into the details of what that finding was. There's one significant deficiency that really goes along with the single audit that I'll get to. The next report is the single audit report. This single audit report is our audit of federal awards and state financial assistance. So at the federal level, it's in accordance with uniform guidance, and at the state level, it's in accordance with Florida statute. In this audit, it's important to understand that we do an audit of compliance, but also the controls around compliance. So we're giving an opinion that the city is in compliance with federal and state laws and regulations and contract components, but also that the controls around the compliance is also being done appropriately. So that'll be key as we go forward. Moving forward to the next page, these last two are required by the Florida Auditor General, the first one being the management letter. Within the management letter, there's a couple of items that we go and respond to. One of those paragraphs is if there's other communications of potential improvements that we have identified, and we did have one item there. I'll get into that just real quick. And it came out of the single audit process. In one of your federal programs, there was a quarterly requirement to submit a report to a federal agency. The reports were done correctly, the reports were submitted on time, but it gets back to the control. So there wasn't a sign-off on that report. So there is a requirement for that sign-off on the control portion. So we had no issue on the compliance that the report was reporting correct information or being done timely, but purely a sign-off. And there were no other items of importance in the management letter. The last one is a local government investment policies report. In this report, it's an attestation, and we would attest that we're looking at whether the city's investment policy is in accordance with Florida statute, and then does the city follow their policy? And in both cases, the city is in compliance and does follow that policy. So moving to page 4, so getting into the detail on the first one being the material weakness. The material weakness came out of really the city's process within the home loan programs. So the city, through the Department of HUD and through various funding sources, provides loans to low-income individuals, and those loans are either completely forgiven, deferred over a period of time, or paid back at a very slow rate with a nominal amount of interest. The issue that we had is over the timing of when revenue is recorded for these loans. So we had no issue on the loans being given out to the correct people at the correct amounts. It's in accordance with government accounting standards of when the revenue is recorded. So historically, the city had recorded revenue up front when it should have been deferred for a later period. So this adjustment, when revenue had been recorded in a previous period, it ended up in fund balance. So this adjustment moves it out of fund balance into a liability because the revenue will come later once the loans are either forgiven or paid off in a future item. So, I'd like to point out to those charged with governance that it wasn't an issue on that money had been handled incorrectly. It wasn't that we had some issue of, where there, sometimes in these types of programs, you get issues on whether loans are forgiven in accordance with the contract, and it can be tricky to follow, but there's no issue around compliance. It's really a timing on revenue in accordance with government accounting standards. The significant deficiency, this came out of the single audit process. So how I'd explain that in the single audit report, we give an opinion on compliance, and again, controls around compliance, and this is a control type of issue. Again, this came out of the Home Loan Community Development Department, and it's a control around allocation of personnel time and salary dollar. So in this department, there's I think it's 6 people that work in the department. They work on various federal, so that department is funded by various federal and state programs. And in each payroll period, their salary is allocated to the different programs. And then the control is that the director or manager in that department signs off on a sheet of paper that says, yes, this time has been correctly allocated to the programs. In our sampling process, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but in a few of the sample items, that sign-off did not occur. So again, we had no issues on the salary amounts, on how they were allocated, but the evidence of the control was not evident within the documentation. So the city has changed the process. Now there's an actual line on the form to show that a signature is required. Previously, someone just signed at the bottom of the page, so it'll be much clearer that the sign-off is needed on that payroll allocation. But, based on the salary dollars, there's a materiality component when it comes to the single audit programs that based on that threshold, it's reported as a significant deficiency. We had no, so then the last item here, we had no audit adjustments identified during our audit. We had one past adjustment, a real small item, but we're required to point out past adjustments if they're over thresholds based on what fund it goes into. This came out of the Marina Fund. There's an inventory that's done at the end of the fiscal year. Based on that inventory count, there was a $6,100 difference between what the inventory count showed and what the general ledger showed. An adjustment wasn't made. It was passed. It was clearly immaterial. But based on the size and the fund, it's required for us to communicate it to those charged with governance. This last page are standard communications that auditors are required to make to those charged with governance in accordance with government auditing standards. So I'll go through those quickly. The significant accounting policies that the city uses are disclosed in footnote 1 of the financial statements. There were no significant changes to those policies this year as compared to last year. These financial statements are prepared using accounting estimates. And the most significant of those estimates are listed here. The allowance around receivables, fair value of investments, risk management accruals. The pension and other post-employment plan have quite a few estimates included in those numbers, and then the estimated useful lives of capital assets. And then these last four, we did not have any disagreements with management. We're not aware of management consulting with other accountants of trying to get a different opinion on a topic. There were no issues discussed prior to our retention and no difficulties encountered during our audit. So any questions that I can answer?
Well, I just want to say, Mr. Alvarez, before I open it up to questions, I think CRI did a great job and your team. I also want to thank all of our folks who I think always do a really good job. This is the reason we change auditors periodically, is to get a different set of eyes. And I think that was accomplished, but I'm still proud of the report and what our internal folks have done, and any glitches that we might have, I know will be rectified. So let me open it up to questions.
No, I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
2.2.
Authorize the piggyback of State of Florida term contract number as indicated, purchasing card services with Bank of America for the term April 6, 2021 through January 4, 2026, including administrative extensions pursuant to Clearwater Code of Ordinances Section 2.5641D, other government entities bids, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Ms. Mitchell again.
Monica Mitchell, Assistant Finance Director. For many years, the city participated in the Hillsborough County Procurement Card Consortium, which enabled participating members to utilize the Bank of America contract for purchasing cards. This program expired in 2019, so the city shifted its P-card program with Bank of America to the State of Florida contract effective October 1st, 2019. The state contract expired on January 5th, 2021, and after administrative extensions by the state to negotiate renewal terms with Bank of America, has been presented for a new 5-year term from April 6, 2021 through January 4th, 2026. The state contract provides for a rebate calculation based on the city's spend with, there's a schedule based on the total spend of all the agencies, and then it's tiered based on the individual entity's spend. So that's how the rebate is calculated with this contract.
Any questions? Consent?
Yes.
3.1.
Authorize a purchase order to O'Neill's LLC, DBA O'Neill's Tree Service of Azona, Florida, in an annual not to exceed amount of $350,000 for term May 10, 2021 through May 9th, 2022, with 4 one-year renewal options pursuant to invitation to bid 20-21, tree and stump removal services, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same standards.
Good morning. My name is Matthew Anderson. I'm Landscape Manager at Parks and Recreation. I'm bringing this forward. Our Urban Forestry Department currently does a great job with the forest that we have to do. We'll use this contract to supplement what our crews cannot get to. It's a joint purchase order that will be shared with engineering, and it'll help us achieve our goals of keeping the city safe. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Questions? Councilmember Beckman?
Thank you. I have some questions if I look at the tab sheet. So I see that we're awarding it to O'Neill's, and one of the things I look at is, what were their bids for different sizes of trees, and in comparison to the other two proposals. And so I'm wondering, why is there such a disparity between each unit price for, if we go down like to item 17, O'Neill's charges $85 per unit price, where the certified small business minority is charging $3,000. And so what I'm thinking is, well, this Tucker Enterprises, the minority small business probably doesn't have the equipment to handle that size. And so one of the questions I have is how frequently do we need to use services for those larger diameter and trees? And can we break this contract up in order to allow the minority small business to receive some of the contract? Because they're bidding lower for like items, 1, 2, 3, they're really lower on those types of things. So is there an opportunity to look at it that way?
Well, as far as the equipment that they have, I cannot comment on because we have not gone and looked at the equipment. That's typically done after this is awarded. I can say 1 to 6 inches. That price is on there, but typically a tree that small is not going to be a hazard and would not be removed. I mean, the need for that is really not there. Those larger trees, that's really where our contractor helps supplement us, because those are the more intense takedowns that are required. As far as splitting it up, I can't answer that question. That's outside of my expertise.
Okay, so like for items, could you give me an idea of like maybe most of the work is for items 8 through 17, so that when I'm looking at, the bids, it falls more at the middle and bottom of that, or do you have any?
Well, I can give you an idea. So we've currently got an inventory going on, and the average size tree in that inventory is 19 inches. If you look at that.
So number 5?
That would fall into number 5, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so they're significantly lower, the one that we awarded the contract for number 5?
Correct.
Okay.
That's not the only situation, but we use that sort of as a baseline because it's data that we actually have that's tangible, so.
Same thing with the bottom part, the palm removal and stump grind. Well, I guess, yeah, Group B, there's some, big price differentials there.
Correct. The palms, we included them because being a joint effort with engineering, if Parks in our situation, if we were to need to take a palm down, most likely we'd have our crew take it down. It would be one of those, either it broke, it's got an issue, it's blocking traffic. It would be one of those that we would do an immediate basis. Whereas, we included that because I don't know what engineering, what they're going to do, but they'll have that opportunity if they need it for a project or whatever that case may be. They'll be able to have the full scale from a 1 to 6 inch tree all the way to a palm. So this is a joint contract.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yeah, I talked to you about this a little earlier. I'm real happy that O'Neill's got awarded this because they've been around a long time, and I know they do a good job, but I was amazed at the difference on the bigger diameters, how far they came down in order to get the contract. But I feel that they will do a good job, and I'm glad that I was happy to see that they got awarded that.
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
No, I was talking to the city attorney earlier this morning, and I knew I had a question for you, and I said I cannot
this
remember
was
what
it?
it is. This is it. I just want to make sure I use O'Neill's. I did not know they were bidding for the city work. There's no conflicts.
Are you an owner or do you profit from O'Neill's?
Sadly not.
I didn't think so. No, sir. The fact that you also do business with them is not a conflict.
Okay. Anything else? Consent?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Item 4.1.
Approve agreements with Prison Rehabilitation Industries and Diversified Enterprises, DBA Pride Enterprises of Brandon, Florida, in the amount of $112,950 for the refurbishment of 2 command vehicles in accordance with Clearwater Code of Ordinances, Section 2.5642, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Chief Slaughter.
Good morning, Dan Slaughter, Chief of Police. This item is to provide for the refurbishment of 2 of our command vehicles. We started out looking at our primary mobile command vehicle, G2454, which is a 2001 Bluebird that has been in service for about 20 years. We initially were looking at refurbishing this particular vehicle, but as we explored it, we found what we believe is a better option. through the Urban Area Security Initiative Program, a 2005 Freightliner, which was previously used by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department for a mobile crime lab, became available. We were able to get that asset transferred to the Clearwater Police Department. It is now labeled G5117. And the cost to retrofit this particular vehicle are far less than it would have been for the 2001 Bluebird. It's also a Freightliner LDV platform, which is a superior platform than the Bluebird platform. The department will also seek to retrofit G3787, which is a 2012 Freightliner platform. It's currently used by our traffic homicide investigations team, but will be retrofitted to serve our hostage negotiation team. Once these two retrofits are completed, we will seek to surplus G3335, which is the one that is currently assigned to the negotiator team, and that team will just utilize the other vehicles that we have to satisfy their needs. The Pride is the heavy vehicle renovations, has provided a quote for G5117 for $75,100 and G3787 for $32,850 plus a $5,000 contingency fee. We did anticipate this cost, so we do have funding available for it in a special project code, a capital improvement code. And city code and state statute allow for council the ability to approve an exception to bid when doing business with Pride, and so we're seeking approval for that as well. We're happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the chief? Councilmember Hamilton.
So we're refurbishing 2 vehicles, not 3, even though there are, you've mentioned 3 separate vehicles, but we're refurbishing 2 of them on this item.
Yes, the city likes us to stay with like a flat number of vehicle numbers. So there's a little bit of overlap here because I need to keep the 3rd vehicle until the 2 renovations are done. Once the 2 renovations are done, we will surplus the 3rd.
And if we were to buy a new vehicle, what's the price tag on one of those?
It'd be about $500,000.
Other questions? Councilmember Beckman?
So I found it interesting to read about a vehicle that's used for hostage negotiations, and I had a couple questions. Do we use this vehicle only when we have hostage negotiations?
Well, as I mentioned with the THI program, so we'll, instead of them having a dedicated vehicle, they can use any one of the other 3 vehicles that we'll have to fit whatever particular need they may have based on the situation. You need a vehicle like that sometimes in the field to go out there and have an air-conditioned space for people to, for THIs do the math, such and such. With the negotiators, so no, we don't use it only for that, but it would be primarily configured and set up with a floor plan to meet that particular need. And when your negotiators are working in the field, they work as like a team, and one person is on the phone trying to negotiate with the person in crisis, the other people are doing research, and they need to be able to talk in spaces where there's soundproofing so they can hand items to them so that they know certain trigger words or buttons or background or history, and so it needs kind of a special setup.
I was wondering, how frequently we would have hostage situations, and is there a possibility of using a hostage negotiation vehicle from the county or another municipality to share that? If it's
Time
not
is of the essence, and once you get to a particular size of Clearwater, you need to have your own resource for your own demand for that. It would be difficult in our scenario to have to share and be guaranteed that it would be available when we need it. And certain operational capacity that you will pay for public safety will be there as a insurance policy to have it in case you need it. It won't necessarily always be used excessively, but it's an unfortunate.
Okay. And about how many hostage negotiation situations do we have a year on average?
I could get you the data. We necessarily haven't, luckily, had as many in the recent past. The negotiators in the field have been able to resolve a higher number in the field prior to the whole team being activated, which is, knock on wood, a good pattern to have. But it only takes one, you only.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Councilmember Bunker?
Could I just ask you to repeat the price of a new vehicle?
A new vehicle,
Yeah.
we believe would have costed somewhere $500,000, maybe even more.
Okay, thanks.
They're expensive.
Consent?
Yes.
Yeah.
4.2.
Approve an agreement between Divecom Services LLC located at 1323 20th Avenue East, Palmetto, Florida, and the city of Clearwater to provide vessel removal, towing, storage, and/or disposal services to accommodate all needs of the Clearwater Police Department and the Marine and Aviation Department, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Chief Slaughter.
We previously had made some adjustments to ordinance 30.055 so we could kind of have an internal practice or policy procedure workflow to deal with derelict vessels. This is kind of the last component to make that process the ability for us to control it and move a little with more exigency at times. It will allow for the towing and removal of derelict vessels. This was department issued RFP 0921. And we sought vendors to deal with this removal and towing and disposal. The committee only received a single qualified response from Divecom Services. It's a one-year contract with 3 one-year renewals. The expenses incurred would be charged to project 315-93415, which is a waterway maintenance account. The derelict removal is a cost that's based on linear foot associated with the size of the vessel, and then towing is $200 an hour with a minimum of $750. So like with the car where you'd have like $50 tow fee plus mileage, it's similar with that with the vessel. I know that some of the tables that maybe in the chart may have been a little confusing. You kind of have to really read into the county, and there's multiple different situations here based on marine and aviation's need and our needs that kind of get difficult to articulate.
Questions for the chief, Councilmember Albritton.
Yeah, this is part of the legislative thing that we were trying to push, and you'll be working with FWC on the derelict vessels. My question is, okay, so you have a derelict vessel, you call, they come and they tow it down to Palmetto. How does somebody, what if they don't get a response for somebody claiming the vessel? If they just say, yeah, keep it, what happens then? Does Clearwater pay that? Or do they what do they do with the vessel at that point?
So, maybe a different process for derelict or at risk. It could be a couple different things. And we're gonna, with this process, we will be able to own more components and not necessarily have to do it directly with FWC if we don't have to. We're gonna use the one that's the most efficient for the city. If a boat is, at risk, we can use the tow service to tow it to what could be some docks or some recreational area for temporary storage. We would be responsible for storing that at a dock for 7 days. After 7 days, then the service could do the removal there. That's for one that's floating, not derelict and half underwater, in which case it would just be a strict removal. So I don't know if that, multiple different scenarios.
Well, when they remove it and nobody claims it, it's their baby basically?
Yeah, it's kind of like they get the salvage rights to it and
Okay.
they to kind of take ownership of it. Now, there are provisions in the statute. We have never taken advantage of them before to kind of make the titled owner responsible, and if they fail to satisfy some of those things, there's implications not only for vessel registration, but their driver's license registrations, or driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, and I do intend to take advantage of everything that I have within the book on these things.
And how do you claim a vessel derelict? I mean, are you going to have some kind of a process that having them move around or something before you say it's a derelict vessel, can't be moved, or?
Well, derelict and at risk are, a lot of times I think people blend the two words together, but for the derelict vessels, they'll be tagged, and we'll send, not only will we tag the boat, we would send a notice to the registered owner. They would have the ability to appear in front of the magistrate. It's the same magistrate that the city used for the code development, or code development board.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that magistrate can then declare that, find them in violation of derelict. We don't have to wait for anything else. After that's done, then we can do the removal at that point.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Councilmember Beckman?
Why do you think we only got one RFP response?
There's a lot of risk with the vendors to basically do this at a price and hope that there's value in the boat to recover, much of the expense. The storage is very complicated and difficult because they're very large, and the disassembly takes a lot of time. There's certainly the thing that frustrates me most about this whole particular process or this particular issue is the environmental impact. I mean, these vessels have many different carcinogens in them, and they are sitting in the water, and so they have to deal with those kind of issues, and it's just a complex business, and so it's difficult to fund. So I think also there's not necessarily a huge amount of money out there to throw at it.
Consent?
Yes.
Item 4.3.
Authorize the Clearwater Police Department to accept a Florida Department of Health Helping Emergency Responders Obtain Support Program grant to update the department's Narcan supply in the valued amount of $11,800 and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Chief Slaughter again.
This item is to facilitate the department's replacement of our expiring naloxone, which is an opioid antagonist to be used to revive people who are suffering opioid overdoses. Most of our supply will be expiring in September of 2021. We have issued naloxone since 2016. In 2020, we responded to 279 overdose incidences, and we deployed naloxone 26 times. In January 2021, the department applied through a program that's hosted by FPCA and the Florida Department of Health, Florida Police Chiefs Association, the program is named the Helping Emergency Responders Obtain Support, or HEROES program, to receive replacement naloxone. This grant has now been awarded, and CPD, the police department, and the city requests permission to accept it. The department will receive 295 packages with 590 doses, which has a value of $11,800. Be more than happy to answer any questions.
All the people that it's been administered to, did they all make it? That is wonderful. Consent?
Yes.
5.1. Thanks, Chief.
Approve the request from the owner of property, addressed as 2055 Beaufort Avenue, Clewwater, to vacate a platted 10-foot utility easement described as the north 10 feet of Lot 18, Cedar Heights, according to the plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 81, page 85 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading. Mr. Burzak.
Good morning, Robert Burzak, Real Estate Services. The property owner requests to vacate a 10-foot platted utility easement along the rear of their property, allow them to pursue construction of a new pool and deck. City staff have reviewed and have no objections. Staff would answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. 5.2.
Approve the request from the owner of property addressed at 1002 El Dorado Avenue, Clearwater, to vacate a platted 5-foot utility easement described as the west 5 feet of Lot 7, Block 69, Mandalay, recorded in Block 14, pages 32 to 35 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, and pass the appropriate ordinance on first reading.
Thank you. The property owner requested to vacate a 5-foot platted utility easement along the rear of their property to allow them to pursue construction of a new pool and deck. City staff reviewed and have no objections.
Councilmember Albritton.
This might have been asked before, but I know these are all on El Dorado. We've heard these before. It seems like, why couldn't we just do a block and just,
About 4 or 5 of approximately 90, and engineering decided to pursue on a case-by-case basis, in case they want to ever put utilities in the home, somewhere in that vicinity. That's been, it was a city engineer.
so there may be some utilities somewhere along the line?
Possibly in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? No. 5.3.
Approve the final plat for Elevate Safepoint, whose physical address is 1551, 1555, 1559 Union Street, located on the south side of Union Street, approximately 900 feet east of Highland Avenue. Mr. Mahoney.
Morning, Council. Tom Mahoney, Engineering Department. So this will be a 2-lot plat consisting of 7 acres, more or less. Lot 1 would be for an assisted living facility, and the second lot will be for attached dwellings. This was approved through DRC on December 19th of last year, and through CDB of January 19th of this year. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right. 5.4.
Approve the final plat for Leaks Thomas Estates, whose physical address is 511 through 517 Virginia Lane, located on the east side of Virginia Lane, approximately 300 feet south of Gulf to Bay Boulevard. Mr. Mahoney.
This will be a 4-lot subdivision consisting of 4 50-foot wide lots. They will be constructing 4 single-family homes on these, This was approved through DRC in February of '21, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? 5.5.
Approve the final plat for
Second, consent.
Aventon Clearwater, whose physical address is 24323, 24479 US Highway 19 North, located on the east side of US Highway 19 North, approximately 800 feet north of Sunset Point Road. Mr. Mallon.
This will be a 3-lot plat for 2 commercial lots and 1 large lot for the apartment homes. The overall site consists of 26 acres approximately, and the apartment homes will consist of 10 3-story buildings that will have 396 units on it. This was approved through DRC in March of '21, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Ms. Clayton, I've actually got a question for you on this. I mean, I know there's some other cities that are looking at slowing down or stopping some of the multifamily residential, and this doesn't really fit what we were anticipating for the US 19 plan.
Avonton, by design, is probably the most compliant with
Okay.
the vision. They actually have tried and I think have accomplished a pretty good grid system, but as far as density, no. I don't know right off the top of my head what the density of the project is, but the other multifamily projects we've seen on US 19 are not as dense as some of our other neighborhoods. In fact, like maybe 15 units per acre. We envision much more significant intensity. I can find out Thursday.
So you think this is the best
I
that
think
we've
this
seen,
is
but
the best project to
Mhm.
date that I think that we've seen. In terms of site design, I don't know though what the density is. I can find that out for you.
well, I just look at the plan, I think the US 19 plan's good, but if all of the parcels that are really appropriate to be used under that plan are used for multifamily, then it's kind of a moot point. Ms. Sanderson, do you have anything to add from an economic development standpoint, or?
Couldn't agree with you more.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the development we've seen, as you said, is multifamily, self-storage now, and we do have a retail development that is in for permitting, a rooms to go redevelopment that's gonna actually do a complete tear down of the site and rebuild, but I mean, that's strip retail. And we do have a concept in for a pretty dense project on, but whether it comes to fruition, who knows?
Right. Other questions? Consent? And 5.4 we put on consent too, Ms. Call. 5.6.
Approve an engineer of record work order to Metzger and Willard, Inc. of Tampa, Florida, in the amount of $256,542 for local limits and WRF permit renewals, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown.
Good morning. My name is Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. The purpose of this project is to renew the 3 water reclamation facility permits and also to reevaluate the local limits associated with the city's industrial pretreatment program. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Brown? No? All right. Consent? 5.8?
5.7.
Means 7. I'm using this, I'm actually gone electronic this meeting, and I hate it.
Really?
So.
Awarding
5.7.
construction contract to CAT Construction and Materials, Inc. of Port Richey, Florida, per invitation to bid 18-0058 UT for rehabilitation of lift stations 54 and 65 in the amount of $1,081,520. Approve engineer of record supplemental 1 work order to Metzger and Willard, Inc. in the amount of $78,139.19, increasing the work order for $262,020 and to $340,159.19, and authorizing appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Brown again.
Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. The item before you today is for construction slash rehabilitation associated with the two lift stations you heard. They're 54 and 65. Note this project includes the replacement of electrical and mechanical components, refurbishment of the wet well, pump replacements, and installing new generators at both sites. It's anticipated construction will be complete within 180 days from notice to proceed. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Councilmember Albrecht.
How many lift stations does Clearwater have?
Well, Public Utilities operates about 74 of them. The city also has some additional ones that are technically owned by other departments. So there's some around 80,
We got a bunch of them.
quite a few. Yeah.
Oh, we are a flat area.
Very, very flat. There's various sizes, obviously, but yeah, we have quite a few.
All right, thank you.
Good.
Other questions? Consent? 5.8.
Approve Amendment 1 to Southwest Florida Water Management District Cooperative Funding Agreement, N915, for Lower Spring Branch Conveyance Improvements, extending the expiration date through June 30th, 2024, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Mr. Schober.
Morning, Elliot Schober, the Engineering Assistant Director. This is an extension of a joint contract with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, Pinellas County, and the City of Clearwater for replacement of some bridges along the Spring Branch section of Stevenson's Creek. There's one at Sunset Point, Douglas. The Douglas one, we're doing a parallel culvert. We're not actually replacing the bridge. And then Springtime and Overbrook. It removes about 100 houses from the 100-year floodplain and lowers the flood stage along Sunset Point. Y'all are familiar with that low area just east of Betty Lane where the water stage is up. So we have some easement issues we're working on. This is just an extension on the cooperative funding until we iron those things out. Are there any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Beckman.
So I looked on the map, so you talk about some replacement bridges at Springtime Avenue, Overlook Avenue, and the addition of larger box culverts under Douglas. And on the map, it's just kind of, is everything located right there under Douglas, pretty much?
No, there's a bridge upstream of Douglas at Sunset Point. If you follow.
Okay, I've got Sunset Point right there.
Yep. And then there's two downstream to the west and southwest of Douglas.
Right. And you've got those.
Springtime and Overbrook.
About where are the 11 homes that are affected? Like, where on the map?
I don't have that information available. I believe most of them are at the corner of Betty Lane and Sunset Point on the northwest corner.
Okay,
I'm going from memory on that one.
okay, but in that general area? Okay. And then I was looking at, so this really extends the contract, like through June of 2024, right?
Yes.
Something like that. But if I was trying to figure out the funding, and where am I trying to get my notes? Jeez.
Funding is
Okay,
kind of
here we-
interesting because the county started ahead of us, and we saw them working on the Sunset Point Bridge, and we saw an opportunity because we knew there was 3 bridges downstream of Sunset Point that were causing a choke. So we talked to them ahead of time, and they funded all of Sunset Point on their own, knowing this was coming, and got involved with a consultant that had done some design work for us and upsized that to the appropriate size. The other 3 bridges, 2 of them are straight Rs, and we're paying for 50% of them, and that's Springtime and Overbrook. On the Douglas Avenue crossing, we're actually just running a parallel box culvert with the existing bridge or a pipe, and the county is supposed to reimburse us for 25% of the construction cost. So our net cost on that should be around 25% of the overall cost, with 50% from the district, 25 county.
Okay,
And then the other 2 bridges will be 50% city and 50% Swift Mud.
okay. Because when I was just trying to get a grasp of the entire cost of the project to our city, because we have, like, Swift Mud is $1,160,000, the county is a max of $500,000, $270,000 from the county for Douglas improvements only, and then there was a total $1,430,000 line item in total reimbursement. So I was just trying to figure out what's our responsibility? What are we paying?
Well, and these are challenging because we submitted for this funding a couple years ago. So the design and the price is moving forward after we submitted for the cooperative funding. So we're kind of crystal balling it. These numbers are approximate. But the long and short, we're going to get these bridges replaced for 50 to 25% of what.
The total cost is?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. That sounds good. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
No.
Consent?
Yeah.
6.1.
Appoint Lori Y. Carter to the Brownfields Advisory Board as a business owner representative for the term to expire May 31st, 2025. Council member, she was the only applicant in that category that qualifies. Matt Crum had resigned from the board last year.
Any questions? Councilmember Beck?
I just wanted to state that this was an incredibly impressive application, and she has a model advisory board application. It'll be great to see what she does on the board. So,
Consent?
Yes.
6.2.
Appoint 2 members to the Aircraft Advisory Board with terms expiring April 30th, 2025. Council members, Mr. Paul Gore, he was serving for his first term, but he does not desire to be reappointed to the board, and that's strictly because of personal reasons, and I think it was more of the pandemic, and no longer felt comfortable serving. That is one appointment, and then the second appointment is Mr. Ferraro, and he is willing to serve another term. He was on his second term, though. So in your application, in your agenda packs, you have applications for Ray McNeil, Roger Schulman as potential candidates. Those are the only 2 candidates you have.
Any questions? Mr. Schulman's been involved for many years.
Yes.
Don't
And
know.
Mr. Ferraro is eligible for reappointment?
Technically, he can be reappointed if there are no other applicants, so.
But if we have other
If you have
applicants?
other applicants, it's been practice for council to reappoint new members, or rather to appoint new members.
Okay. Then I would say Mr. McNeil and Mr. Schulman should be the new members.
Consent?
Yep.
Yes.
6.3.
Appoint 2 members with terms to expire April 30, 2025, and appoint 1 member to fill the remainder of an unexpired term through May 31st, 2022 to the Public Art and Design Board. Council members, Jonathan Barnes and Mr. Eric Seiler are both serving their first term and are eligible to be reappointed. Unfortunately, Mr. Potts was the board member who passed away not too long ago, and so that is a vacancy that we have. Now, for the vacancy, we have applications for Teresa Brom-Bozen and Gregory Bird for consideration.
Some really good applicants there.
Yeah, they're good. They're both
I
good.
agree.
So what's your pleasure?
I like Mr. Bird. I think he has a great deal of experience with multiple facets of the arts.
And I like Barnes. He's been in the college art level.
I'm fine with Mr. Bird.
I'm happy with both of those choices. I also liked Teresa.
Mr. Barnes has already served on a board before, though, and Mr. Bird hadn't, so I thought
Yeah.
that would be good.
So there's consensus on Mr. Bird.
I go with that, yeah.
Does council wish to reappoint the other 2 members who were serving their first term?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
May I place it on consent?
I beg your pardon?
May I place it on consent?
Yes. Item 7.1. Any questions about the COVID proclamation? Come on up. You're here. Want to give us an update?
Sure. Good morning, Javon Graham, Division Chief, Emergency Management. Right now, this is our extension, our weekly extension to continue the mitigation efforts dealing with COVID. For statewide, we are having more and more vaccinations. As everybody knows, vaccinations are becoming readily available. In fact, it's been said that anybody who wants them can get them at this point. So everybody who wants them is getting them, and then there's still the ones on the fence, but vaccines are moving along pretty well. According to the state level, we're at 14,665,875 doses. In Pinellas County, we've had 727,568 doses. And as far as our COVID testing statewide, we're at 2,242,000, and Pinellas 79,000. The 5-day average, the highest we've reached was 219 positive cases in one day for Pinellas County. So our trend is kind of still going on the lower level, but we still are having those fluctuations. So just as a reminder for this resolution and in the extension of this, one thing that the focus was on a lot of time is about the reimbursement and the financial recovery. But it's not just about that as well. It's also about maintaining the proper measures, control measures that we have, allowing the city manager to make these decisions on a fluctuating basis depending on how the health emergency continues to be dealt to us. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be
And
willing
the
to answer.
county's meeting on what, May 12th?
I believe so. I don't exactly remember the exact date, but I believe so.
There's been a lot of discussion about that, different
Yeah.
people wanting different things. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't want to, what the word on the street basically is, my understanding is they're going to be discussing it on, I think it's the 11th or 12th. And what they're looking at is probably doing away with the mask ordinance as of June 1st, which would put us past the Memorial Day weekend. So that may or may not turn out to be true, but that's kind of what has been mentioned to me.
Plus the school season's almost over.
Yeah, school's over,
So,
everything else. So.
Other questions? Chief Grant? We'll see you on Thursday.
All right, see you there.
7.2.
Request authority to institute a civil action on behalf of the city against Reliant Underground LLC to recover $2,249.63 for damages to city property. Mr. Fuino.
Thank you very much, Ms. Agan. Good morning, members of council. Michael Fuino, Assistant City Attorney. In July and September of 2019, Reliant was doing work and hit two separate gas pipes, gas lines that are operated by the city, causing a total of about $2,300 worth of damage. Several demands were sent and they were ignored. Therefore, I am recommending that we institute a civil suit against them to try to recoup those damages. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Fino?
No.
7.3.
Request authority to institute a civil action on behalf of the city against Steve's Excavating and Paving, Inc. to recover $5,205.89 for damages to city property. Mr. Fleener.
Thank you again. Members of council, Michael Fuino again. In December of 2019, Steve's Evacuating was doing work actually on behalf of the city and hit another gas pipeline, causing over $5,000 worth of damages. Demands have been sent, but Steve's Evacuating has refused to pay, so therefore, again, I am recommending that we institute a civil suit. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Vice Mayor?
Now, they were working on a contract with the city when this happened.
Yes, they're actually performing work under the Stormwater Improvement Project, and
But they, they got paid. We paid them for the work they did, right?
I'm not sure exactly what was paid, but they were working under a contract, yes, sir.
Okay, I would think it might have been an easier thing just to deduct the cost of the damages from what we were going to pay them. But no, I have no problem if they created the damage and this is what the cost of the city was to repair the damage. I have no problem.
Councilmember
Go get it.
Alvarez?
Yeah, I know whenever you dig, you got to call, get locate services out there. Did they not know? I mean, did they not do that, or do we know that?
No, actually, we did place locates out in, I think, September of 2019. And then work was done, so those locates were obliterated. And what Steve's was supposed to do was call in for new locates, and they didn't do that. So that's how the gas line ultimately got punctured.
Do you have something to add,
No.
Mr. Horn?
No, no.
Okay, you were leaning in. Consent?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm missing 7.2, 7.4.
Council, I'm going to ask you to continue this item to the May 17th work session and the May, I guess it's 20th meeting.
Okay. Any questions at this time? All right, 7.5.
This item is continued from March 4th, 2021, and it's to approve the contraction of Clearwater K Community Development District and pass ordinance 9437.21 on first reading. The parties have requested a continuance of this item till the June 3rd meeting.
Okay.
Now, you can't do that on consent because it's a public hearing, so they are requesting another month's continuance.
Okay. Any questions? So obviously they have not found a resolution.
The parties who we have seen really don't have the ability, without the bondholder, to reach a solution to this. There is a lot of activity occurring, but although they're working very hard to get a resolution, there is not one. The reason they have requested just 1 month is because, like you, they have to form a budget. The CDD has got to do a budget. And so July would put them right in the middle of their budget time, so they will need a decision, likely one way or the other at the June meeting.
Okay, we'll deal with that on Thursday. Any questions for second readings, 7.1 or 7.6 through 12? None?
None.
All right, 8.1.
Mayor, just one comment before I cover 8.1. Just to make you all aware, staff, we are evaluating how we want our employees to address an environment of mask wearing and non-mask wearing. Just to give you an example, Rosemarie was confronted by a person on the elevator last week, questioning why she was wearing a mask. We think the person worked up above us in the building, but we're really trying to get clarity in what kind of environment we're going to have where our employees will want to exercise their options to wear a mask as they interact with the public, or the public chooses not to wear their mask, creating the question as to whether that person is really vaccinated or harmful, potentially harmful to our employees. I mean, we're sort of kind of working ourselves through that. It may take a little while for this to kind of settle out. What we don't want to have happen is conflicts in the work center. We will at some point be completely open. And so when that happens, we want to make sure that we're prepared for it. On 8.1, Jeremy, Alehouse, and Tara and I, we spent about, I don't know, maybe an hour and 2 hours going through the parking inequities. Mayor, we, rather than continue to have a lot of special workshops like you and I were talking about, what we'd like to do is we'd like to take portions of this issue throughout the next several work sessions and kind of work through it that way. We'll make sure that we're not avoiding a much bigger issue, but we think there are segments that can be handled during the work session. Those decisions, parking inequity decisions, really are the manager's decisions, but because of our partnership, that's why we want you all to be involved in providing input and feedback on how we should handle those. And there are some inequities, long-standing inequities, and that's why we need your feedback. I would highlight one thing, if you all remember, Mayor, I think you would remember this, Hamilton, Vice Mayor, you would remember this, and maybe Council Member Albritton, when we did the renovations and changes on Beach Walk and the improvements that we made on Coronado, and we eliminated the parking. If you recall, a lot of the businesses had parking in the city right away, and we had to sort of reclaim that. But we held off doing anything north of a roundabout. And what we said was, as we began to see some redevelopment in those areas on North Beach, then, we'd have to kind of talk about how we want to deal with that. So some of these parking inequities, kind of have root in how the businesses have been using parking in the city right away, or city parking. They've kind of claimed it as their own. And so as we begin to address these inequities, we'll be confronted with some of that. But if you all are comfortable, I'd like to just do this in pieces rather than have a 2 or 3 hour workshop, because that's probably what it may take. I think we can manage this. You all comfortable with that?
Everyone good with that?
Yeah.
And back in the day, those spots that the city manager was talking about, most of them were pull-ins, so people were backing out onto Coronado. It was nightmarish and dangerous, because many of them blocked sidewalks. Again, as the city manager said, it was on the city's property, but over time, they assumed that it was their property.
All right, thank you for that. On fireworks, it is our view that having fireworks for the 4th of July is best located at the ballpark, versus trying to do it at the beach. Our thinking is that if we did it at the beach, we'd still have to do it on the mainland somewhere, because, our residents would be, we think our residents would be a little offended if their only option was to go to the beach, and they live on the mainland, and we know how traffic will be very challenging on July 4th. The county has not rescinded its ordinance yet, governing large-scale public special events. I think we're all kind of anticipating, at least a lot of the other cities, the larger cities, are anticipating that they will do that. So we're thinking it may be during that May 11th meeting that we'll have it. But even if they don't rescind it, having it at the ballpark gives us some options in terms of size control, and the fact that you can see fireworks from almost anywhere now. Also, we obviously will not have a fireworks display that is consistent with what we have come to expect annually. Because we use some pretty big shells, and we also have some residential areas that live, somewhere around the ballpark. So
And adjacent to US 19.
yeah, and adjacent to US 19. Now, of course, 9:30 at night on July 4th, there's probably not a whole lot of traffic on US 19, but still, we will be very mindful of how to do this in a very safe, way. The ballpark will have fireworks on the second and third. They'll have a game on the 4th, day game, and then we would be able to have fireworks the evening of July 4th. So that's kind of what our strategy is, and I'd entertain any questions or comments or concerns.
So how are we dealing with the contractor? Are they amenable to waiting until we hear from the county whether large-scale events can occur, or?
I asked our guys to address that.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Chris Cook, Senior Manager, Events and Athletics. Contractor we've talked to, we've actually talked to him about 2 different options at that location. Because what our contract is, it is a large dollar amount for the 4th of July show. That's how the fireworks companies write them up, because that's such an important day for them. So we've looked at potentially splitting it into 2 locations, doing one fireworks show off of Joe DiMaggio in that area, which would allow more people to see it. And then also using the existing footprint they have at Big Hair Ballpark. All of these do come with different concerns. So the Special Event Committee has discussed parking, traffic, safety, staffing, different concerns like that. So not only do we have our own city concerns, but when we've talked to the Threshers and Philly staff, they are coming off of 12 straight days of working and fatigue with their staff, as well as having a game that day. And then also their pressures from Philadelphia on making things profitable there. And if the total attendance isn't lifted, and it's still where they are right now at 2,200. That would make it very difficult to open up, have the expense that they would have with the ballpark, and then just something for us as a city to be aware of too, with how many people would actually be allowed to attend and see that investment we would have for it.
Vice Mayor?
Chris, question, I understand that you're talking about attendance being limited at 2,200 in the ballpark by Major League Baseball rules and whatnot, but if the game is in the afternoon, this doesn't involve a baseball game. This is something totally different. Do baseball's attendance rules have to apply? Aren't we, it's our stadium, aren't we allowed to have more than, and this isn't a baseball game, we could allow more than 2,200 people into the stadium that evening for it, couldn't we, legally?
If the ordinance is not approved, we'll have to get county approval.
Right, but if the county releases it, and I mean, this is an outdoor event, this is, you can park at Joe DiMaggio, you can park at Clearwater, St. Pete College, you can park at Best Buy on the other side, you're gonna be able to see the fireworks in that location. But this is not a baseball game going on, so I'm not sure where baseball's rules or limitations on attendance would apply to the ballpark, would they?
Yes, sir, that's a great question. So when we talk to the Phillies and Threshers staff, that particular attendance kind of number is what they're accustomed to working with, what their staff would be comfortable, running and operating. Do we have use of the area and surrounding areas? Absolutely we would, but that partnership with staffing at running the ballpark would be something important to us to make sure we could do it safely and effectively. The only thing we would need to do, because you're right, it doesn't apply to Major League Baseball rules with baseball games, is without the lift of the county's, mandating.
Large-scale event.
Yeah, large-scale event would be that we'd have to come up with a public safety plan, which are things that we're comfortable doing and we could do. We would just need to show what it is that we're planning on doing, how many people we're letting in, how we're going to monitor that. So we could certainly do it. Again, that partnership with their staffing, I think, is important.
Other questions? Comments?
I mean,
Concerns?
when we do 4th of July, when we did it for years in Coachman Park, we didn't have, I don't recall us having we didn't have the level of concessions available at 4th of July that there are at Jazz Holiday or anything of that nature. It's much smaller. I would think, if you're coming to see fireworks at the ballpark, not being able to accommodate everybody with concessions, I don't think is a problem. If they didn't even run the concessions, I don't think would be a problem, so.
Yeah, just a couple other, to your point there, with the fireworks, one thing that's a little bit different than their normal baseball fireworks shows is you don't know exactly when they're gonna go off because it's after a game. If we're gonna announce, 9:30 PM, and PD and fire here, so I don't wanna speak for them, but this is what we've talked about in the meetings. If we say it's at 9:30, the risk would be you have cars driving, stopping at 19, stopping at Drew Street, at a certain space and time to be able to get as close as they can to the fireworks, not to mention spilling out into those neighborhoods. So those are some concerns with that. We're a very densely populated city. We've looked at a lot of other options, so we're not just here today giving you the only thing we've looked at. We've looked at many options. The fallout area you have to have for the fireworks, along with the parking, we just don't have a lot of space to do that here.
Well, I would imagine a lot of people would not even come into the ballpark. They would just be staying at their automobiles, so that when it's over, they can pull right out. But it may be an opportunity for some of the concessionaires within the stadium to make money as well. Are we going to notice the neighborhood at all prior to this, so that they're aware that this is going to be our primary location?
Yeah, I think, yes, we would, especially those areas, even like south of Drew Street that would have parking lots that would be heavily used, that we think, SPC and some of those lots around there. We'd notify, areas of where we think people would park, and then the neighborhoods back off Sharkey and some of those areas where
Because we have
could be
people
a lot
park
of.
in there illegally, and really mucks up the works, so I just want them to be aware ahead of time and not be surprised.
Yeah,
Councilmember Albert.
you're right, Mayor. We have both unincorporated as well as incorporated neighborhoods.
So, I know Memorial Causeway you close during the firework normally because they shoot them kind of down there near it. 19 would be on this side, but you're not using the same size. You're gonna downsize the casing, the firework.
Yeah, we've had the contractor look at the size we could shoot, so we wouldn't have to close down any major roads.
I got you, okay.
That was my question to the city manager when we were talking about this. You're also talking about moving some of it further west.
Correct.
Yeah. Other questions? I support us going forward. I think people want to get some normalcy, and if we can do it and, be sensitive to the neighborhood and try to anticipate all of the unintended consequences, which there will be some, then we just need to really wait for what the county does, and if not, that we're ready to apply for some type of permit to be able to do it anyway. Everybody on board?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Aiken?
No, sir.
All right, city council discussion items. I had always been on the U.S. Conference of Mayors previously. I haven't done it in this past year because obviously things have been kind of shut down. I would like to join back up. There is an expense, obviously, with it, and the dues are $9,181, and then there's some travel. But I always found the organization to be beneficial. It allowed me to borrow ideas and bring them back to all of you. And there are 2 conferences a year. I know that Mayor Creticus, I think, dropped out of it after a year, but I think talking to other mayors around the country, I found it to be very beneficial for the years that I was in, but it is an added expense, and so I wanted to come to all of you to find out if you support it or not.
I would. I think we don't need to be inventing the wheel all the time when we can borrow ideas. I think it's a good thing, so I'd be for it.
Councilmember Bunker and then Beckman.
I think it's money well spent. I'm for it.
I would support it, but I have a question about, for the $9,100, do you have access to like a website and resources and articles and listservs and things like that that we could share in with that, and you just attend the meetings, or is it just a one person has access to it?
No, the city is joining. If there is communication with them, it has to be through me, but there's resources. I try to send a lot of the emails that I get today, because they are communicating with everyone right now. And so, for some of the stimulus money, I've been communicating it to Tammy and also to the city manager and Mr. Ravens. So I think we're still trying to get a handle on the rules of that money that we've received. So I pass a lot of that on. I also bring a lot back. But normally it's voluminous, the stuff that you get, because there's a lot of different committees and you sit on some of them, obviously. But I'll make certain that the resources are available to all of you.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You okay?
Yep, absolutely.
All righty. 10.2, chickens. So, I think we've all been asked about this issue, and I did promise several constituents that I would have a discussion. I found a couple different articles. I don't know if anyone's interested. I think these were the 2 that I found that were probably the most balanced. They actually talked about the pros and the cons. Can you get one to Ms. Call too?
One for Rosemary.
And we can't vote on this tonight, and I know there are some citizens that want to come and speak about it, on Thursday. But wanted to get everybody's feedback as to level of interest. I know some people want, to be able to get eggs and even some of the chickens. Most of the ordinances, in fact, all of them in Pinellas don't allow for roosters.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Which are loud. There's gonna be people that are for this, and I'm sure there's gonna be some consequences that we're not aware of. And I think we need to be, go in with our eyes wide open. I can understand wanting a supply of eggs and potentially the poultry itself. I will admit to everyone, this is not something that I really want. I don't know that I want chickens behind my house. I have heard that they can be loud and there is an odor. And it's all about how people take care of them. And some people will do everything the right way, and some people will think it's a novel idea and it probably won't go as well. And so that's one of my concerns, and once we put it into play, then we'll have to be dealing with that. And I think one of the things that's important to me, and I want to talk about at a future meeting, is code enforcement. And so we'll just be adding more to our plate, no pun intended, by doing this. But I'd like to have an open discussion about it. Councilmember Albrecht and then Vice Mayor.
Okay, well, when I heard this was going to be on the agenda, my first reaction is, no, we don't need farm animals in the neighborhoods. But getting on the internet and reading the pros and the cons, and I'll tell you an interesting article was the TBN Weekly back in 2011 when the county discussed this, and to hear the reaction of the commissioners, pro and con, the county did finally decide that they would pass the ordinance, and actually I took a look at the ordinance, and it pretty much covers all the pros and the cons on it. My original fear was coyotes and things getting into it, but they got it covered pretty well as far as the kind of chicken coop you got to keep it in, and how many. Only 4 chickens is allowed in Pinellas County, and then they exclude all the other type of things like peacocks and of course any other type of bird. And they said, it's an interesting read, so I would say everybody read through that, and I will read what you just gave me today to get the pros and the cons. I kind of came around just for myself, thinking, we're pushing urban farms, urban gardens and things like that, and if this is a way that people can actually get food for themselves with the eggs and so forth, with no egg sales or no fertilizer sales. They could use the fertilizer in their gardens, it's got a lot of pros to it. So I kind of changed my thinking on it, but I look forward to hearing what everybody else has to say on it.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think the last time the city discussed this was back in, 04, 05, you and I were both on the council at the time. And I know one of the things I've heard through the process coming up, this Bill remembers well, one of the things that keeps getting said, and I want to get clarification or verification of it, they say Clearwater is the only city in Pinellas County that doesn't allow it. I don't know that that's accurate. I'd like to see if we can get verification of that. But I'm not saying absolutely not, but I would have to think, I'd like to know what other cities, what kind of regulation they have to it, or, do you have to have a minimum lot size? Do you have to have, does it have to be set back from your neighbor's property by a certain distance? I can't imagine my neighbor having it and having their coop right up against the fence that we share, of something of that nature. So, how do the cities that are allowing it, what are their what are their rules? I mean, what are they, you know, is there a minimum lot size? Is there and I know all about having, you know, chickens on your own property, because my aunt and uncle in Georgia had chickens on there, but they had about 5 acres of land, and, you know, it was not an issue with neighbors, but you know, we're the most densely populated county in the, basically south of Washington DC, if I'm not mistaken, and we, you know, I'm not sure how conducive it is, but I'm willing to listen, so we'll see.
Councilmember Bunker?
I'm not a big fan of chickens myself, but I've had a couple of friends who love their chickens. One in LA and another person in San Diego who had the most beautiful exotic chickens. And you know, she did a great job of having a beautiful coop in the backyard. Still predators managed to get in. One thing though is she had a rooster, and my God, no roosters anywhere near the city. Those were so loud. Chickens, she loved the fresh eggs, and you know, it's something I would consider.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yeah, I think it's worth a discussion. It'll be interesting to see if people show up on Thursday. I know that the emails we've received have all been in favor of having chickens with responsible limits, certain number of runs, and keeping them penned, and they're only hens, and so it will be interesting. I'm for urban farms and gardens, and we had a goat when I was younger. I got my mom a goat for her birthday, and it was a little Nubian goat. We lived in the suburbs, and she lived out back with a bunny, and so, you know, things can work out. I too had a question, like Vice Mayor Hamilton, about one of the people who emailed said Clearwater was the only city in the county that didn't have this ordinance. So I wanted to know if we could get clarification on that. But as we can look at other cities' ordinances related to chickens, it's easy enough to pull those up and look at them and see what they say about property lines and things like that. But I think, you know, maybe I would make a few calls to some different leaders on surrounding municipalities and ask what sort of feedback have they gotten from residents. You know, so I can contact some, I've got a meeting with one of St. Pete's council members on my continuum of care meeting this afternoon, Amy Foster, and I'll just ask her, have you guys gotten issues with chickens in St. Pete? And just to see what kind of feedback there is there. But, you know, I'm inclined to give it a try.
Ms. Hagan, you have anything to add?
I don't, except that I expect that most of the ordinances bear close resemblance to the county's ordinance. So we can pull that out and take a look. We can check with surrounding jurisdictions as well. I know Dunedin does.
I
Haven't
think
heard a lot of.
Dunedin, Bel Air, Largo, and
Yes.
St. Pete.
Yes,
Yep.
they for sure do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about some of the smaller ones. I would be surprised if every city allowed it, but I know that quite a few do.
I have some clients in Bel Air that have some folks behind them that have them, and they're not fond of them for a couple reasons. The noise, they don't have roosters obviously, but the hens are still not silent, and they say at times, depending on the wind, there certainly is odor. And we do have coyotes, at least in my neighborhood we do. And they come around because we've lost a lot of house cats. And it's very obvious when a coyote's gotten a cat, because they only eat one end and leave the rest. So there will be unintended consequences to this. But I have a feeling that people who are passionate about it will be here on Thursday. What I am concerned about is the people who may not want it probably aren't gonna know about this unless, the paper and, you know, there's other ways to communicate to people. Ms. Clayton, do you have anything to add? You wanna dip your toe in the water?
I mean, I don't think I really have anything to add other than what you all have talked about. The things, you know, I think it's great to have people be able to produce eggs and all. What I'm concerned about is noise and smell. Those are difficult things for us to enforce. I've had experience at someone's house next to who had chickens, and it was not pretty. So you're going to have those situations, and then how much time do you want us spending trying to solve these kind of problems? Because what will happen is that we'll have to go there, we'll have to document that there's some sort of ongoing smell and that there's a nuisance. And so those are the issues that we will face. Also noise, that'll be an issue. So it's a lot to balance.
Councilmember Beckman and then the Vice Mayor.
Well, I appreciate that, I do. I wonder how many people actually have chickens, but I also have had personal experience throughout my life with people who have let cats roam, and cats who pee and poop underneath my windows, and there's nothing worse than cat stuff right in your garden, and it's hard to get them to go away. And barking dogs and all that stuff, I mean,
It's just another animal.
another critter that people have to be responsible.
Yeah, I mean, there can be dogs that cause the same situations with noise, barking, and all of that. So, you know, it'll just be one other thing we have to deal with.
Ms. Aiken?
Mayor, if you guys decide after a discussion Thursday night, we would still have to come back to you with an
Right.
ordinance. So there would be 2 more opportunities for the public to have input.
That was gonna be my point. No matter what our discussion Thursday night, there's no way we're gonna be passing an ordinance and say, yes, you're allowed. As of Thursday, you're gonna be allowed. There's a lot of road work to be done on this, before it's ready for, you know.
Chief, anything from you? There's so many good chicken jokes here.
I would say, I think Ms. Clayton, kind of the same problems that she mentioned would be the ones that we would have to address. I think it was best, any enforcement of any such ordinance probably best in the code department.
Wham, there you go.
Here, let's push this one.
Nice job, Chief.
All right, anything else on this? We'll discuss it further on Thursday. 10.3.
Okay, PSDA and Fort Pinellas update. Well, Fort Pinellas hadn't had a meeting since the last time that I discussed it. We have one coming up, so I have to hold this till next time. But the PSTA, we had a board meeting last week. A couple of things, I'll make it short. We had a diversity and equity inclusion report. At PSTA, this is their mission statement of PSTA. PSTA, we would intentionally make inclusion a priority. Diversity is what drives us, no matter who you are, where you're from, how you think, or whom you love. We connect all people to places, to opportunities, and to chances, and we will always strive to do better. We pledge this to everyone. PSTA's workforce pretty much comes out to 30% women, 70% men. Under 40 age group, 17%, over 40, 83. BIPOC, 49%, white, 51%. So it's pretty balanced. I just wanted to throw that out there. The other thing that I thought would be important to report to Clearwater was PST is nearing the end of a 5-year contract with Jolly Trolley to operate 3 fixed routes, which utilize a fleet of 18 trolleys in the area, North and South Beach, Clearwater, and one route traveling as far as downtown Tarpon Springs, serving all coastal areas in between. A longer-term 10-year agreement benefits both PSTA and Jolly Trolley, allowing it to move a more appropriately sized facility, which is underway. And PSTA can establish its expenses and institute a cost-saving partnership in purchasing fuel for trolley operations. Now, we are looking for electric zero-emission trolleys. And PSTA, in their agreement, is going to be requesting that let's see, the agreement ensures the trolley move forward matching PSDA's strategy to acquire battery-powered zero-emission vehicles. The new facility must be able to accommodate electric trolley charging stations. PSDA and Jolly Trolley have agreed to a 10-year fleet replacement schedule and includes 2 electric trolleys paid for by PSDA. This allows trolley services to begin being more environmentally sustainable at a pace equal or exceeding PSDA's. The PSDA board approved a 10-year agreement last Wednesday, so it will move forward. AVA, PSDA's first demonstration of the Autonomous Vehicle Advantage Plan, which is AVA, concluded in St. Petersburg in March. A partnership with T-BARDA and the cities, PSDA's plan to expand AVA to Dunning and Clearwater. Routes have been developed in coordination with city staffs and stakeholders. AVA service in Clearwater anticipated to launch as early as September 21. And that's my report.
Any questions for Councilmember Albrecht? All right.
What is AVA again? Can you explain exactly what that is and what might be coming as early as September?
That's the Autonomous Vehicle Advantage, which is a small electric bus that is autonomous, that runs, it ran from basically Alfred Wooded to, along the front there in St. Pete.
To the Vinoy on
To the
Beach
Vinoy
Drive.
and back. It's just a pilot program, so people can get familiar with some autonomous vehicles. It's very nice. It doesn't go very fast, and it does have a driver in there, but he doesn't really, he's just there in case of an emergency, but it's free. You can go down and take a ride and see what it is. Now it's in Dunedin, and then in September it'll come to Clearwater, and I think the route, they haven't got it exactly. When we talked about this, I think a year or so ago, maybe even before that, it was going to be North Beach, I think, from the Acacia down, not quite to the roundabout and back, but I think they're looking to maybe do it South Beach and, maybe to Clearwater Point and then up, not getting on the roundabout, but it'll get an opportunity for people to ride an autonomous vehicle.
So will it be there for like a few weeks as a promotion?
No, it'll be there for a few months.
A few months?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the actual vehicle, though, only seats like 4 or 5 people, doesn't it? It's
No,
not
I think
a full-
it's,
not-
it might be 8 people.
Maybe 8.
Yeah,
Okay.
6 to 8, I think, somewhere in
Okay.
Yep.
It's not big though.
there. No, it's not.
Any other questions or comments? All right, 10.4.
Okay, so this is mine, and so as you said at the last work meeting, my interest in solar and saving money for the city with solar installation is very high versus other people, or their interest is not quite there. But I am asking for us as a body to give direction to our city manager and staff that when we have any new buildings or repairs to roofs, that we institute an RFP process to get quotes for solar on roofs and make it competitive. And that's simply, what I would like to have us give direction from this day forward, that as we move forward with buildings, for example, the buildings in Imagine Clearwater, the Harbor Master and the back of the house buildings and the restrooms and anything with a roof, that it is our policy that we will, at no expense to the city, put out an RFP for solar on a rooftop and get that back and get a competitive quote back. And I think that that's wise. We spend over $7 million a year on electricity in this city. There are ways we can save money every single day, and there are ways that we're not saving money by not creating our own energy every single day. And I just think we need to get experience with solar, have it on a building, see what it's like, and begin our learning. And if we, institute some kind of a middleman or something to negotiate that, we're losing money. We don't need to have that expense. Other cities aren't doing that. And so I would like us to have a consensus to let staff know that this is a great thing. Again, there's no expense to the city, really. The only expense might be time in evaluating the RFPs. But we can look at RFPs from surrounding municipalities, see what they're getting, what their agreements are, and what their savings are. And to talk about things like return on investment, I think we need to look at our just the payoff rate for how much does it cost and when will it be paid off. That's simple enough. And when I got solar on my home, we got multiple quotes. The people come into your house, they look at your roof, they pull up the GPS, they can tell you what the square footage is up there and how much sunlight it gets. I mean, they have data from years, so you get a certain range of sunlight. And then they ask you, how much are you paying per kilowatt? How much is this system going to produce of kilowatt of energy per day or per year? And then the cost versus, multiplied by what kilowatt you've got up there is your savings per year. I mean, it's simple as that. That's just what it is. And so, I don't like to keep asking at every agenda item where there's a structure or something, are we getting a solar quote? I think it's just standard operating procedure. It should be, in my opinion. I mean, what have we got to lose?
Mr. Horn?
Yes, Mayor, understand the council member's passion about solar, and I think ever since she's been here, she has really pushed that pretty hard. I think before you all have more conversation, I think we'd like to tell you what we do, describe how we do it. Certainly there's been an influence in that arena. I think the issue's morphed a little bit. First it was, what kind of process are we using? To now I think it's more of a mandatory, we need to have solar. So it's kind of more. So Tara and Micah, could you all just kind of summary describe what our process is? We would like feedback from you on that process. If you don't think that process is adequate enough, we can certainly hear this feedback. But before you get in the mode of directing us, I at least want to share this with you.
Good morning, Tara Kivitt, Engineering. So currently, we have included sustainability, resiliency, all sorts of verbiage in all of our RFPs. Typically they're RFQs, our design work orders. So right now we're approaching, this is just for capital projects, not maintenance or existing buildings typically. So we're including that type of thing broadly. So not specifically solar, but just, sustainable. So things like the recent police substation, that was actually designed to meet a LEED Silver certification, but even in our design work order, we dictated that we would not be pursuing that certification. So again, solar wasn't specifically mentioned. We're looking at things broadly. So right now, we are not specifically, including solar, but we obviously can if that's our direction.
Well, we have, the police station was under some prior standards that engineering was using. In November of this last year, when we did Fire Station 48's design work order, Tara's group included solar as part of the review, and has been doing that with the more recent buildings. The police substation, the design on that project began far enough back that really we were not including it at that point. But they were the other elements that Tara had mentioned a moment ago. We have included that in the work orders recently. We just haven't had those projects come forward for construction yet. So they will be built in, and we will look at the most efficient approach. It may not be 100%, it may be 50%. It's really going to depend on the design of the building, and that's why we need the design from the front to include that review, so we can look at the whole picture and figure out what makes sense financially.
Right,
So the new fire station, is that going to be to a Cat 5 too, or?
Fire Station 46 out at the beach is not a Cat 5 building, because they, of course, evacuate.
Sure.
That, we're expecting to include solar as an add alternate, so that we can truly look at, you know, the cost for that component and make a decision when we bring that GMP forward.
And that fire station was also one that where we had not included that information. The one on, across from Clearwater High School is the one that we included most recently, the solar as a requirement at the front end of the design. So that's another fire station where we're trying to build it in.
Fire Station 46, I think we started the work order before you guys were even on the council. So 47 it's included in the design work order.
Councilmember Beckman.
So included in the design versus going out and getting an RFP with competitive bids, what's the difference?
Well, so then during the design process, the architects and engineers will know to account for solar, and they'll include that when they are designing their roof, because it's a good bit different than your standard residential type. You know, we're designing and constructing buildings to last 50 years plus, and maintenance is a different issue, of course, and things like that, versus your standard residential home. So it does get a little more complicated.
Okay.
So them knowing at the beginning that that's what we want to include, it's a better approach, a more efficient approach. And then, so when we work with, for our vertical construction, we typically work with CM at risk firms, so they'll get pricing on that during the process.
Okay, so knowing at the beginning that that's what we want to include is important, because that's why we have problems, or, you know, there's challenges with putting solar at the solid waste transfer, correct? Because it's got skylights up there.
Correct.
Okay. And so one thing I want to be, you know, understand more is who's going out and getting the quotes? Because I don't know that I'm comfortable with developers or architects or some general engineer going out and securing quotes and bringing them back. Can we have or find out how Dunedin, St. Pete, Largo do it with their quotes for competitive prices?
Right, we can look into that, but ultimately, like I said, most of our buildings are constructed using a CM at risk firm, and they have to follow the same procurement guidelines that the city does based on different thresholds for those subcontracts. So they will advertise it like on their own project website. Biltmore, for instance, is doing the upcoming fire stations. So they will get competitive bids on certain packages based on the type of trades involved. So we review those. We're part of the process of selecting the most reasonable, lowest bidder. It's a very transparent process. And then, of course, in a CM at risk scenario, we then pay additional CM fees based on a percentage of all those subcontracts, along with some overhead and profit to that firm.
So there are extra fees by going through that? Okay.
Yes.
I'd be interested to learn what the other municipalities are doing as far as getting contracting with solar installation.
Sure. Well, and we have found using CM at risk firms is very successful so far, you know, as a way to streamline the process. It helps on the project management side. It helps us, I think, reduce change orders. It's a more collaborative approach. And so, yes, sometimes it costs a little bit more, but I think overall it is more successful on many different reasons.
For those folks at home, that's construction manager of risk. Okay.
For larger projects, something small and simple, there's no need. But when we're building a new, you know, $20 million building, like the gas complex, for instance, that was a $23 million project. Having, Walbridge did it, having that CM at risk firm manage all of the trades, it's just kind of beyond our expertise and time. It's a good fit for projects like those.
Well, and I guess it goes back to the question I asked when we talked about the police station at Category 5 having solar, and that architect came up and told me it was a 25-year payback, and I would like to follow up. Still haven't had an opportunity to show me, you know, the bids that's how much it costs.
Right, and we did get pricing, so that was, who's doing that? Ajax Building, got some pricing for that, but that was not your standard approach. Because it was Cat 5, I think the penetrations in the roof were very complicated. They were advising against it. And then in the parking area, the costs also included the carport structures. So again, you're not looking at just solar array panels on a roof. So hence it was more costly.
Councilmember Albrecht?
Yeah, I had a chance to go down and look at the pier last week, and I was amazed to see all the solar panels that they used over their parking. It was just it wasn't really a roof, it was just all solar panels, and they're all connected together, but it gave the cars shade, and then at the same time, you know, I'm not sure what they're doing with electricity. I haven't got into that far yet to see how much, you know, is being generated back, but I got to actually see it, and I think, is that what we were talking about on the police station, something to that effect?
Similar, I believe, and I think maybe Sheridan, we can do some more research, but I'm pretty sure what was done at the St. Pete Pier was completely funded by Duke.
It was.
So a little bit different scenario, and right now, Jeff Walker, our project manager in engineering, is working with Duke and Chief Elders on maybe looking at that type of approach at some of the upcoming fire stations.
I think the difficulty at the police station with those structures was that area, the footprint is very, very tight there. It was a risk-reward discussion. You know, if those parking structures are not anchored enough, which was a high part of the cost, they may fall down. We may not be able to deploy the vehicles that are housed at the police station out for the emergency. So there was a balance that they were trying to achieve with that.
I see.
And that's not the case at the pier. They were not anchored to that level.
Well, I would like, you know, we need to have the broader discussion, first of all, about sustainability and energy savings. I would like to get a better handle, because I'm hearing different things from different people as far as paybacks and everything else. And as I said, you know, in our last meeting, you can make a qualitative decision that the paybacks don't matter. That's a decision that can be made. But we still haven't seen the data. And I'm a numbers person, so I want numbers from somebody. I don't know where you need to get them, but I want them, because all we're doing is chasing our tail.
Well, to start that process, we're working on, in fact, this Thursday, the 6th, we've got a team at Sheridan, myself, Earl, Bryant, Mike Lavery, Sheridan. So we have a short list of 4 firms. We've reached out to all of our EORs and AORs on a citywide solar feasibility study. So we're hoping that will give us a better roadmap on, you know, what other municipalities have done, when is a good time to start this process, maybe some different ways to bid it out, what kind of thresholds we should be looking at, you know, what's a good target payback, you know, or not. So then we can bring that forward to you when that effort is done. We should be selecting either an architect or engineer next week. Then we'll get a work order, a PO issued, and share those results with you.
And Councilmember Beckman, I'd also like to, you know, again, I don't think this is the time. I think we need to have that broader discussion. But, you know, I'm trying to understand, would you like solar panels on every building, or do you want to reach a certain level with an offset? Because there are efficiency issues, right? I mean, we had Duke approach us, it's probably been 7-8 months, to ask if we wanted to participate in one of their solar fields.
We did.
And they're buying land up in Levy County that's extraordinarily inexpensive, and they're building solar fields that they get economies of scale.
Right.
And so they're trying to reach a certain level of offset. There may be places within the city that we can be much more efficient and create something like that. Or is it that, you know, you're looking for arrays on every single building? And those are 2 different things. I'm trying to understand what the objective is. My objective would be to determine an acceptable offset that we want to reach, and then find the most efficient ways to get there.
My objective is to save money in any way we can. my objective, I pay $10 a month for my electricity and to fuel 2 cars. That's it, and that's just to have the meter. I am about saving money, and when there are opportunities to save money, I want to do that for the city. And I think, you know, with all due respect, I don't understand what a study is hoping to bring back to us from, you know, some group. Number one, how much are we paying for a study? Number two, the math, I'm a numbers person too. I truly am a numbers person because I know, you know, I don't want to be paying for energy when the energy is out there. And if Duke has an array, but Duke's realizing that savings. When we put solar, when we purchase solar and put it on our buildings, we reduce our electricity and we reduce the check that I write, or we write $7 million every year to Duke Energy. And all you have to do is look at the, you know, what's the kilowatt that I'm putting on the roof? What am I paying for kilowatt? What's that generating? And I subtract it. That's it.
But there is a cost of putting the array on the building.
There is, and so there's a life, what is the payoff cost? If I paid $40,000 for that, how long will it take me to save $40,000? And then if it's 4 years or 7 years, whatever it is, and then everything else is gravy. It's free. And so that's what we need to understand is how much are you saving by putting solar up there? How long will it take to pay that off, the cost of putting it up there? And then, you know, the lifetime of a panel is 25 to 30 years. And that's just the warranty, not how long it'll still, you know, produce electricity. That's just the warranty. And the rate of return, they calculate in, you know, there's very slight degradation over time. That's all calculated in. So when you get an RFP, those numbers are right there. That's what you're evaluating when you want to decide to go with a contractor. What are you charging me to put up that kilowatt system? How much am I paying for my kilowatts? And what's my savings? And you know, we as residents pay more for kilowatts versus municipalities, but there's still savings. You know, savings is savings. And I would say before we get together a group, and for God's sakes, before we pay for a group to give us feedback, ask surrounding municipalities, their leaders, to come in and talk to us about their experience. How do you do it? How much have you saved? And learn from them. I mean, they're there.
Where did the 24 years come from, Tara? On the police station? Is that something that you all snatched out of thin air?
The architect mentioned that number.
No, so we had, Harvard Jolly's worked on that along with their electrical engineers and Ajax. Ajax got pricing, so we no longer, and that we just got recently. So it was actually based on the bids that were received and what it would take to do a turnkey operation of installing solar panels at the PD substation. And the payback was long. I think it was even 30, 34.
Well, that might be because it's some category 5 and stuff.
Right.
You'd have to look
now,
at the bids.
Now, we did not evaluate that with a fine-tooth comb, to be honest. You know, because we got it quickly. It was just kind of a rush. But we've worked with both of those firms before. You know, I trusted the numbers they got. I don't know every nuance on why it was so high. We've touched on a few reasons why.
And I think that the initial quote we got 3 in total. The first one from the electrical engineer that works for Harvard Jolly was much lower. I think it was closer to 15 years.
Well, and that wasn't based on a quote. I think it was
Correct.
just based on an estimate.
That was just based on a calculation. And it's when they began to, when the construction manager at risk began to add in the structural elements that were required, where it ballooned up to the 25 and then ultimately the 35-year period. So that first one was just based on a calculation, roof space, the distribution system, those sorts of things.
Well, and I think the Category 5 police station is kind of a unique situation, so I don't want to dwell on that one so much. But any structures or buildings in Imagine Clearwater, the 2 new fire stations, a possible new city hall, all these things. I just would hope it's standard operating procedure to put an RFP out to solar companies and particularly target the ones that municipalities have, you know, gone with around us, particularly if they've had positive experiences, and see what comes back. I think if we get it on one building, it's not an unknown. We're going to start our learnings and understandings as we go forward, and here's the numbers, you know?
So what would our threshold be? That's,
No, go ahead.
well, no, that's one of the things I want to figure out. I think if we're going to go this direction, which I'm fine with if numbers make sense, but I want to get thresholds at which we'd be a go, non-go on different structures.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, I'd like to make two comments. First of all, because I know public may be watching this meeting and may get the impression that the professional staff here isn't concerned with saving money. And I know all of you are concerned with saving money, so I think we ought to be careful when we make comments that would imply that you're the only person concerned with saving money, because it really does not do well in creating the right kind of understanding as to what your professional staff is doing. Second thing is, we have to proceed and evaluate the whole ball of wax so we can explain to you what the costs are involved. So I understand the simple calculation. Councilmember Beckman, I understand kind of how you kind of look at it, the way you kind of laid it out. But our staff, we've got to methodically go through a process of evaluation so that we cover everything we believe we need to cover to be able to tell you this is how we're going to do it. So you've got to give us time to do that. We don't mind the rigor questioning that comes forward when we bring things to you. But I just ask that you not take an approach where you're dictating to us how we're going to do our professional job in evaluating whether solar is appropriate or not. Because I really feel like it won't work. I mean, none of these certified engineers are gonna just do something unless they can defend it. And then I think, Mayor, to your point, that ultimate decision, you know, like you were talking about payback and all of that. I mean, there are areas where you guys set policy. You know, you all determine, you know, if it matters. But at least you'll make that decision based on the data that we put in front of you.
So what's the time frame in which we can have a discussion, do you think?
Well, now, okay, so two things. On the discussion, you're talking about the energy discussion? Or are you talking about a project by project? Because we bring the projects forward to you that will have analysis as a part of it.
I understand that, but I'd like to have an overarching conversation with more information about buildings that aren't necessarily Category 5. Where are there, where's critical mass? So, I mean, we talked about potentially putting solar panels on the Welcome Center out of Pier 60. There's got to be efficiencies, I would assume, with larger arrays. At least that's everything I've read. Okay? I want to get to an ultimate policy decision so that we decide. I'm not real clear on your answer on whether you want to get to a certain level that we are producing energy via solar or other means versus putting solar on every building. You could potentially get to the point where you're actually putting electricity into the system. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. I'm just curious, what are you ultimately looking for? I think it's a realistic question. It's not a toughie.
No, it's not.
I mean, do you want to slap a solar panel on everything that's stationary? Or do you want to get to a certain point where we are offsetting all of the electricity that is used within the city?
Well, ideally, I mean, that'd be a great goal, wouldn't it? But I think, to start, I'd like us to evaluate any flat structure, any structure that is conducive to having solar panels, we can look at. I mean, I think that's reasonable.
So there's not an offset number. You just want them on every structure that can hold them.
I want the opportunity to save money in every way possible.
Okay, but you can save more money by being efficient. I could buy a car, if there was such a thing, that got 200 miles to the gallon, but it cost me $200,000 versus buying a Toyota that got me 40 miles to the gallon for $30,000. How long is that car going to be running for me until I can make up the cost of the $200,000? That's the question I'm asking.
Well, here's what I would say. You know, a municipality can save about 25%. Do you want to just jump in or? In the middle?
What I was going to say was that the conversation that we're going to have with the engineering groups, and they've all done local work, the ones that we're going to be speaking to later this week, you know, is to help us provide some of that information about efficiency. You know, we have a lot of different types of buildings. Imagine Clearwater, you know, we looked at the different solar elements in the park. The one large issue there is we're going to lose, if we're sending it to a central distribution point, we're going to lose a lot of energy. So the engineer is going to help us determine what makes sense. You know, and all of those different style buildings that we've got, they're going to look at those things with us and try to help us figure out where those efficiency points are. So, you know, we're going to know a lot more in the next couple of weeks when we can bring in an expert, provide you some additional information, hopefully by, you know, by the next meeting, but I don't know if that timeline's realistic. I'll have to talk to Tara about that.
I mean, I go back to Ruth Eckerd Hall, we need a new roof out there. And when we were looking, we called Duke to see if they wanted to partner. That is an enormous roof, by the way. It's an enormous structure. We asked them if they wanted to partner on solar with us because it was an opportunity. They said it wasn't efficient enough to do it. That's a shocking fact to me. Okay, I don't think we have another building in the city that has that much square footage. Now, they may be doing the pier and the parking, but they're doing it for, in my opinion, public relations reasons. And this goes back to my comments. I think you get mad at me, which is fine. My wife does all the time too. But I don't mind if we make a decision that we're going to put solar on everything. We can make a decision that we have a policy, that's what we're going to do because that's what we think is important, whether it costs more or costs less. I'm just trying to get to an actual policy and the basis for which we're making the decision. And I'm trying to understand, we don't get to talk privately because it would be sunshine. This is the only place that we can do it. So I'm trying to understand where you're trying to go to so that I can better understand, maybe the rest of the council can better understand, so that we might get there.
So first and foremost, I mean, I think equal is my passion about protecting our environment, reducing our carbon emissions, and saving money. I'm the cheapest, most frugal, parsimonious person you will find. And so I'm about those two things. I will say that, you know, I don't know when Ruth Eckerd Hall got their quote, but one little data point I have, you know, that I know because I've seen this person on a panel in Dunedin like 4 years ago, is, oh my gosh, now why did the name just escape me? The car dealership on 19.
Loki?
No, it's a Chevrolet.
Dimmitt?
No, but anyway, oh my God.
Maher?
Yeah, Maher Chevrolet is net zero. They're loaded with solar on the top. They don't pay an electricity bill. You can't see it, right, because you drive by. So the Maher Chevrolet, you know, financial guy was at a forum in Dunedin, and one of the questions that was asked of him was, hey, you know, would you do, and this was 4 years ago, what would you do anything differently, or what were your learnings? And he said, I wish I would have done it sooner. You know, McGill Plumbing has solar on the top, and I think they're about net zero. And so what that means is they're not paying anything. And the price of solar has gone down. So here is, to be crystal clear, I would like, you know, in my perfect world, where there are roofs that are conducive to solar, we have solar on those roofs. I really would love to see solar on Habitat for Humanity homes, and so that those people are paying almost zero for their electricity. And have EV plug-ins in their homes as we go forward, because that's the future as well. You learn that from the Jolly Trolley. And so that's what I'm looking for, because every time I see a solar panel, it means that person is saving money. They're saving money. And we look at the payback period. So that's what I would like. I think, you know, it's not too much to ask to look at a surrounding municipality, perhaps St. Pete, look at what their RFP language is for getting solar on their buildings, city buildings, copy the language pretty much, kind of model it, and then start sending it out for buildings in our city as we go forward. And then when you ask about a threshold, well, what's the threshold when we decide this is going to be a good payback? That's individualized based on the location of that roof, based on, like I said, the GPS. Are there trees? You know, what are the surrounding buildings? What is the expected output? And we just evaluate those individually. And so if the payback for the Harbor Master station is, you know, it's a 7-year payback or whatever, and we're like, well, yeah, this sounds good because it's warranted for 30. So, you know, that means, you know, 24 years, 23 years, we've got gravy coming in here. We've got free energy. So I hope, does that clarify it?
A little.
A little?
Councilmember Bunker.
All 5 of us eagerly jumped into joining Duke's solar array because we know there's a benefit to it. There is a benefit to solar. And I think we really should be considering it seriously on every building. I'd be curious to know if Ruth Eckert got a second quote on solar on the roof other than what Duke said. Because there perhaps were some competitive bids that would have made sense, whereas Duke was saying, well, we'd rather make the money the conventional way. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it doesn't hurt to ask to find out what the prices are. And I think there is a difference between retrofitting a roof like where you live, where you said, okay, can we add solar? And they tell you. And what we're doing now when we build the new police station, we're dealing with a contractor who doesn't necessarily go out to every single solar competitor to get a bid on that, do they? Don't they usually work with somebody that they're comfortable working with, or maybe 1 or 2 people? And in the case of the Cat 5 police station, I understood the concerns there, putting holes in the roof, kind of counteracting the Cat 5 reasoning for building that entire station. So it may not be appropriate for every building, but I do think that we should be considering it on every building. And whether that's part of the initial deal finding a contractor or not, I don't know. And that's, I think, some of the process that you wanted to talk about, of where this enters the system. Because when we have a contractor who's doing a project, they may be hesitant to be checking for lower bids from other people. And can we force them to? I suppose we could. But I think ultimately, you will save money with solar. Now, I talked to the folks out at Solid Waste about putting panels on their buildings, and they told me that the industrial panels are so much more expensive than what you would get at a home, and so financially it didn't make sense. I don't know whether that's the case or not. Potentially it is. But I think there are questions I'd like to have answered, and I think there is a benefit all around to going to solar. Vice Mayor?
The argument or the discussion isn't about solar benefits and whatnot. To me, it's we have, as a government, we have a set amount of money we have to spend. I know and Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the District 3 substation started out at about $16 million. Ended up at 12. That means that there's $4 million in adjustments right there. Now, if you add solar to that project, if we could, now being Cat 5, we're not doing, but I'm just using it as an example, let's say it would have been $70,000. That's $70,000 more on that project that you got to find $70,000 in savings somewhere in that project, somewhere in that building to make it work. Or you've got to take $70,000 away from another project that the city's working on. Because we don't mortgage, we don't finance solar panels. We pay for them. We don't finance hardly anything. I mean, we're doing a bond issue on Imagine Clearwater. Those are the kind of things we do mortgages on. Other than that, we pay as we go. And so it's a calculation, and it's an issue that has to be addressed on every single project. If solar is going to be that much more or X amount of dollars, and we've got this much money allocated for that project, is the solar more important than the $40,000 in cuts to the quality of the project we have to make to do them? So that's where I come at it from. And yeah, I don't dispute once it's on there what it saves, but there is a payback. There is amount of time before you have done that, and but we pay as we go. So and we have a finite number of dollars from the taxpayers that we have to spend. So.
Councilmember Albright.
Yeah, I'm taking this all in, and I kind of agree with Councilmember Beckman. Back when we were doing our re-roof on the rec center, I asked, and I think Sheraton had just come on board there at that time, and I said, are we getting a quote on solar? And I think we did. I think it came because I remember seeing she gave me something that showed how it looked, the panels on there, but I don't really remember how it went after that. I think it was very expensive and it was already moving forward. And those are the kind of things you really need to do before you roof. Mm-hmm. You need to know where the solar panels are going so you can roof over the structures that are holding it, not go in afterwards. So, but am I hearing it correctly that now that when we have a capital project that you're putting that in as let's get solar quotes? So, I mean,
it's in the design aspect of this, and that's where we're going to get you the apples to apples comparisons and the numbers that we can compare against local and national averages for solar panels, right? The type of system that's being placed in, they're very different, and we need to make sure that we get a good design so that we can get comparable quotes.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, we are doing that now in all new capital projects. All right, so that we are looking at that, and that's a good thing, because whether we do, then the next thing would be to see, I think, what the mayor's saying. What is the benefits? How does it offset the ROI if we're still interested in that? I am. I'd like to see what those numbers are. So as long as we're getting it on all new capital projects, I think that's maybe what Councilman Beckman was saying we need to do. So you can't go back on things like the beach fire station that was started way before this, but the design elements now moving forward, we're doing that.
And they're trying to add some in there and see if we can make something work during the design for the beach fire station. It may not work. We're not sure yet. But we are trying to go back into some of those projects where it wasn't in the initial and see if it makes sense.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Horn?
So we'll get you a date on when we continue this discussion.
All right. Councilmember Beckman?
So I will add that most solar installations are retrofits. So we're talking about new ones, and that's great, and I think that's, I think that's a reasonable ask. But most of them are retrofits because it does make sense to universities, schools, businesses, residents, municipalities. When Councilmember Albritton said the next thing is to see the benefits, I would say those numbers come in with an RFP. And so they're unique to each project. So I don't think a discussion about, well, what's our threshold? I think it needs to be looked at individually. We need to get started with one, with an RFP on a roof, maybe one of the, imagine Clearwater roofs, whatever. Maybe one of the new fire station roofs is send out an RFP so that we're looking at it for the very first time. Oh, this is what it looks like. This is how people align the cost-benefit analysis. And do we need extra insurance? And what does that cost? And all that stuff is a learning process that I'm willing to, let's wade right in. And I will say, I'm going to reach out to leaders in surrounding municipalities and ask what their experiences are, and give me a copy of your RFP. What does it look like? And how long have you been doing this? And what is your savings per year? And I can come back with that number too and say, wow, St. Pete's saving, I don't know, $1.5 million a year in energy costs that's gone down with these 8 solar installations or whatever. We have 800 residents in Clearwater that have solar on their homes. They are saving money every single day. And, they're reducing carbon emissions, which is a nice little benefit as well.
All right, we'll look forward to the data that you bring back to us. We're 16 minutes beyond a break. I'm going to push the last discussion item till Thursday. Is there anything that anyone wants put on the agenda for future meetings? All right, with that.
Mayor, before you go, just as an FYI, and this is in the news, the governor is issuing an executive order suspending all local COVID-19 orders effective July 1.
Effective July 1.
Yes.
Okay. Well, good for him.
Yeah.
We're adjourned.
Poor Joel.